and I was hunting last week, and I learned that she really needs some handlebars, as some porcupine quills can certainly show her. So I'm excited to have my own long list of questions. But again, I want to make sure that folks know, please put your questions in the ask a question box, or in the chat. If you're over on Facebook or YouTube, please throw those in the comments. We've got some staff folks that are going to pull those over as well for us, so we can make sure that we've got those answered. We've got about 45 to 50 minutes, so we should have plenty of time to dive in. And again, so can't thank SportDog enough for sponsoring this session and connecting us with Clay. SportDog's been a long time supporter of Rough Grouse Society and American Woodcock Society, and we can't appreciate that enough. Additionally, want to chat about our auctions and raffles. Clay was joking with me when we were getting set up, that while he was waiting on us to wrap up the last session, he couldn't help but go in and bid on some things. And I know I kept mentioning that Purina gift certificate. He is in the bidding war. So now, while I have him tied up for 45 minutes, here's your opportunity to get in there and get a bid over the top of him. But on the SportDog front, we've got two things. We've got an 1875 collar that we're auctioning off, and then we're also doing a dog training raffle, which I'll make sure that I throw the link in the chat for you all to check out. Has a Yeti loadout box and a SportDog collar. There's one other item in there as well. So make sure that you give that a look and get your raffle tickets. Between the collar and the loadout box, that's a heck of a deal. So keep that in mind. Clay, I want to give you an opportunity just to introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are and why you're here tonight, and what your bird dog chops are.
Yeah. Hey, I appreciate the chance to be here. It's awesome to get together with you guys, fellow sportsmen, and fellow dog guys for sure. So I grew up Oklahoma. Was a dove and bobwhite hunter since a really young kid. About 8 years old was the first year I got to carry a shotgun, one shell at a time. Had to prove all the safety chops and do all those things the way Dad and other mentors had me doing. So been over bird dogs my whole life. Currently, I'm a lab guy. Just by virtue of being in South Dakota, I can hunt sharpies, pheasants, ducks, geese, and he's just kind of a nice all around guy to have in around the house. So that's kind of my background. Always been a hunter. Was an avid deer hunter and bow hunted, did all that stuff until, as an adult, got my first dog again. And the bow and the rifles all went to the back of the closet. And, now it's a shotgun, because any day I could be deer hunting, I can be chasing at least an upland and a waterfowl bird with my dog. And, no offense to the deer, I don't get to take my dog with me. So it's, that's the choice I made. And I also seriously say that if you invited me to go hunting and told me I could bring a gun or my dog, my gun would stay home. But give my boy some retrieves, give him some flushes. He's back here. He's curled nice up on the bed. I can't tell you that he had a real rough day today, but he knows where the soft spots are to snooze, and he's over there just crashed right now. So hopefully he's not disrupted our time together.
No, that's all right. They're allowed.
They're allowed.
Yeah, I would say so. So if I wasn't having to moderate this and do some typing and keep an eye on a couple of things, my puppy would probably be sleeping in my forearm right now. But I had to send her elsewhere for this. But that's all right. Well, excellent, Clay. Thank you so much. We didn't get to chat about that in our pre-session. That's pretty much my story as well. I grew up deer hunting and loved deer hunting, and then I got a bird dog, and it was off to the races from that point on.
Absolutely,
birds are way more important, and now I'm privileged to work for the Rough Grouse Society and American Woodcock Society. So I'm looking forward to this chat. One of the questions that you and I chatted about in the pre-session, I think, is a great opportunity to really start off, right? So we're talking about e-collars and dog training. Talk about, for you, the importance of appropriate collar conditioning, and maybe run through how you like to do that. Obviously, with dog training, there's more than one way to accomplish a goal, but e-collar conditioning is particularly important. So I think that before we sort of dive into maybe advanced questions or troubleshooting or any product questions, I think it's important to lay that foundation, right? Of if we're going to have this product, how do we utilize it appropriately from the moment we bring it home and put it on our dog?
For sure, it's a critical step that, if done right, it just lays the foundation for years of a good cooperation between you and the dog, both training and in hunting. But something done improperly can possibly be impossible to fix. And so that's the biggest thing is I tell people you can never, ever train too patiently. You can never just kind of move along at the right pace for your dog. And I've been accused of the guy that if you hit it and it doesn't work, you get a bigger hammer. But that is just such a tough approach when it comes to the dogs and bringing them along, because my guy back here, perfect example. A year ago, I was nervous that, okay, how much dog do I have? What's his drive level? He was really slow to mature. Once we got through that first summer of training, he got some real birds and things started coming along. He grew up. He, became a year old. I had a totally different dog, but if I had taken the training from 15 years ago on my last lab, Skeeter, who was just a maniac, and had tried to apply it to LS, it wouldn't have worked. He wasn't there. And so I had to adjust, move a lot more slowly. And so I just can't recommend that enough, that move at your dog's pace. Get all of your leash work, get your manual pressure of, holding up a chin, pushing down on the rear end for sit, all of the manual methods, all of our training chains, check cords, leashes, all that foundation really has to be laid. In my opinion, again, you said there are different ways of doing it, but I really look at the e-collar as it polishes our training that we've done manually. It's not a magic wand. It's not a, pull out of the box and hit buttons. And I was just working the Mitchell Cabela's store this last weekend, opening day, and had guys come in that were frustrated with their dogs that morning and asked if we had an e-collar that was charged up. And I'm just like, that's not what your dog needs. What he needed was, work this past spring and summer and bringing him along. And I'm newly married and into the process of collar conditioning a 3-year-old golden retriever who just knows what I want her to do, but decides it's going to happen on her terms. You were talking about your pup this last week that forgot that coming back to you was something important, and decided to go checking out stuff on his terms, and you saw how frustrating and really unsafe that could quickly become.
Well, especially when a porcupine's involved.
Oh, geez, yes. You wander off for her sake, not just for your pride or your frustration, but that's a safety factor. So that's really the biggest thing. In the e-collar technology has come light years. I look back, about 28 years ago, the first time I picked up an e-collar, and it had one button, one setting, and it was pretty nasty. No way I could have used that collar on this dog. It would have been way too much pressure for him. But as you look as not only does the technology progressed, the way we use them, that we are using them as just a cue, not as punishment. Use now with having multiple levels of static correction. In the collar, we can set it to a low, to a medium, a high, so that you can really find, that range of correction levels your dog needs, so that we can start using the collars a little earlier, because frankly, we're putting really, really light touches on the dog, way less than a lead. And so once we start doing that on leash work, now leash and e-collar together, and then we finally transition to off lead and the e-collar, every step of the way, we're making sure the dog gets it, that he knows what I'm asking him to do. he knows how to comply. And if the pressure shows up, he knows how to turn off that pressure. I think that's a huge, huge factor in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, how do you, for somebody like me, I have this puppy, so I've put the collar on her just to run around. She's not even big enough to have it fit tightly yet, so she's clearly not at the point where we're going to do any work. It's more, for me, it's more having her get used to, when we're going to work, this is a part of the deal, so that my oldest dog is very collar wise, so she knows when she has the collar on, and she knows when she doesn't, and she likes to push my buttons when that happens. So with this one, I'm trying to make sure that she just thinks it's a part of the deal, and that this isn't all the time thing. But when it comes to turning that receiver on and really introducing the dog to the stimulation, particularly lightly, right? That's where I would start. What's your process for doing that in terms of introducing it? For folks, to say they're in the hunting season, maybe they're a little bit frustrated, like you mentioned, those folks out in Mitchell, but also they're tuning in tonight because they want to learn more and how to do this correctly. How would you recommend that they start introducing that to the dog?
Well, I like to hear that you've got your dog wearing the collar already, even though it's not turned on, even though it's not tight. Just because if we put the collar on and immediately start pressuring the dog with it, and sometimes the tendency is to overpressure, the dog really does become collar wise. He starts to associate that when I have this on, I got to listen. But when I don't have it on, I don't care what Mike says. I don't care how loud he screams or what words he uses. I'm out of here. And so by having the dog wear that collar almost as a dummy collar for a while, they don't know when we start using it that it's a collar, because they've had it on for so long that it's not what they associate with the pressure. And so the more time you can do that, the better. I've recommended to some people putting a 3 or 4 month old puppy, let them start wearing the collar, but we're not going to turn it on for another 3 or 4 months. Mm-hmm. Kind of the same reason that kindergarten, we don't start it at 3 years old, is that that's more than what a kid, that's 5 or 6 needs. A dog needs more short training sessions than a 3-hour marathon on Saturdays. Mm-hmm. And if we'll get that collar out, put it on them, we go do cool stuff. We do a little fun training, especially early on, light pressure, light work. It starts to be that when the dog sees a collar, they're like, oh, hell yeah, this is go time. I want to do this more, as opposed to it being a negative and them associate it with, I've seen dogs cower from collars. I've seen dogs, just total demeanor change. And the opposite of that is my last lab, 13 and a half. Even there at the end, I'd put a collar on him because he'd gone deaf, and I had to use the vibration to get his attention. Even in those last days, tail would wag, his head would come up. The e-collar was never a bad thing to him, even though it certainly was used over the years to correct him. It was all part of him having worn it for so long, and then associating it. That it's like every time you saw me in a plaid shirt, I came over and gave you $20. It wouldn't take very long. You saw me wearing plaid, you'd be running up to me, and be going like, "Hey, Clay boy, I sure do." Like, well, that's that e-collar. Every time we put it on, we go outside, we get some retrieves, we get a wing for a young puppy. We do what that dog loves to do, and they start tying it together as something that's fun and not something that's bad or painful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how many of us have the story, right, that we pull our hunting boots out, or our training boots, or whatever they are, and the dog starts going nuts? The collar is certainly the same thing. I think there is something here. I'm trying to, in my head, spin up. I mean, you can give me $20 for sure, but this is for Rough Grouse Society. So I wonder if we might have to do if folks bump into you somewhere and you're running a flannel shirt, that maybe we won't put it on you. Maybe we'll put it on them. If they bump into you and you're wearing a flannel shirt, they have to give $20 to Rough Grouse Society.
I'll sign up for half, put SportDog on the hook for the other half.
I like it. There we go. Perfect. Excellent. So we do have a couple questions in here that I want to get at. So I have a question from David in here. Is it good to start a pup on the kennel command? I have a feeling, I think I know where this is going. There's a train of thought that you want, when you introduce the collar, you want to do so in a manner or with a command where the dog's going away from you, so that they don't safe space. Because what a lot of folks see, at least what I've seen, and I'd be curious on your perspective, Clay, when you use the collar only for here or come or whatever you do to get the dog back, that when you apply that pressure later to other commands, the dog safe spaces. So what's your perspective on that?
I completely agree that I've seen it. I fell in the trap early on. Fortunately for me, SportDog, we have an incredible pro staff, and I get the opportunity to hang out with them. And so I've had some really good training, by our pro staff guys. But going back to the manual teaching of commands before we break out the e-collar, I use a heel stick. And we would use that heel stick not as a whip, but as a physical barrier that I could keep the dog from coming to me, getting them to go to a kennel, or we use a platform a lot early on. If just some sort of a raised platform, doesn't have to be high up in the air, but I like that as the early kennel command or a place, so that I can drive the dog to it with that heel stick. And then we're starting to use that heel stick and the collar together, because he understands what the heel stick pressure is. Now, when I use the e-collar and the heel stick together, he knows they mean the same thing. So now when it's just the e-collar, he understands. But completely agree. He needs to know that sometimes you're going to get pressure to go away from me. Sometimes you're going to get pressure to come in, but there's never a safe out. It's always the obedience is really the only way to turn the pressure off. So yeah, I'm a fan of it.
Excellent. Thank you. I think if that's the David I'm thinking of, he's got a young dog too. So I'm sure he's trying to think about how to introduce his pup to that as well. I want to transition to a product-based question. So Mark Fouts, our Vice President of Member Relations, is on, and I was just up with him in Minnesota, and he is sport dogged out. We had all sorts of stuff plugged into the walls. Nice. while we were up there. He wrote in, I know there's been some talk about adding a beeper to the tech or the GPS series. Can you speak a little bit about that, if that is the case, if there's any information on when that might be available, if it's trending in that direction?
So there has been some talk about it. That's my role, is product development for SportDog. And so getting feedback and hearing from a dog man that here's a product that I know I want, it kills me when I have to say that it didn't make the cut of moving forward products. Unfortunately, it was one of those where our GPS products are already much nichier than our e-collars and our fencing bark collars are. And so then to add a niche product like a beeper on top of the GPS, which I completely get the use case that the GPS gets you within 15, 20 feet. And sometimes that's a mile away in the grouse woods. When you need to know, I need to know exactly where that dog's on point. It just pains me to have to say that I don't think it's going to make muster. Now, with that said, I can't get any deeper into, but than to say we are never sitting still at SportDog, and I'm going to be playing with some new prototype stuff even this week. And so product development continues, and dog training, dog locations, other fun dog stuff is going to continue to come from SportDog. So the attorneys will shoot me if I say any more than that right now. But SportDog is not sitting on any laurels, nor do we think we could. So more stuff to come.
Gotcha. Excellent. Well, that's a bummer, but I appreciate your candor and answering that honestly, and certainly don't want to upset the attorneys over there. We appreciate you being here and understanding what it means to be a grouse hunter and needing to know exactly where that dog is, because sometimes we can't see 10 feet, let alone 15 yards. And so I certainly appreciate that, and keep carrying that mantle. We did have from a training perspective. We had a question over from Lee watching over on YouTube. In your perspective, what's the best way to get your dog motivated to train and work, particularly if they're not food or play or sort of tug motivated? If your sort of traditional methods of motivation aren't there, what's a way that what's a surefire way for you that you go to wind a dog up for training?
So, does he tell what kind of breed we are? To not paint with too broad of a brush, it sounds like we're talking maybe an English pointer or something that doesn't have the typical need for us.
It doesn't say. It just says that if it says it wants to work on getting the dog motivated if they don't get food or play motivated.
One of the best, and I think that if those traditional methods don't work, birds, because you turn on that prey drive and there's no substitute for feathers, and we do that in our bird and gun introduction. Both of my dogs have been over to Oak Ridge Kennels, where they have a 2-week course where they start with a frozen pigeon and a cap gun, and over the course of 2 weeks are flushing and killing killing pigeons over the dogs, progressing from the cap gun to a 12 gauge. And I've seen some dogs show up there that just really aren't that excited, don't want to work, putting them on that chain gang so that they see the other dogs geeking out. And it's kind of like, oh, well, maybe I should think this is cool too. But the birds, it flips the switch in their brain that says like, okay, I am a predator. That's why God put me on this earth, is to go after birds. That I'd go that direction. It can be overdone. I don't want to get in too far off in the weeds, but I like using that to really flip them on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it's a bird dog, right, that should be the ultimate reward. So I think that's great advice. Thank you. I do, David. I don't know if it's the same one as earlier with the question or a different one. Wanted to chime in for some extra feedback, so you can go back to your product development folks. It says the instant feedback that Beeper gives is very important, and highly suggests that it be added. Particularly, I'm sure if you run the satellite, the satellite GPS systems, there's the delay there in the seconds. That can eat up a lot of time and a lot of distance, particularly when a dog is running. So just wanted to chime in on his behalf as he wrote in. I have another question.
We do have.
Sorry, Clay, go ahead.
We do make a standalone beeper.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a beeper that, though it can work with our e-collars, it doesn't have to. And you can set it up so that every 5 or every 10 seconds while the dog's running, you get one tone. And then on point, it does go on constant. I also remember the days when we thought we were going to have to start breeding English pointers with giraffes because of all the crap we had on their necks to get it long enough. So I do get that having everything in one package is preferable, but it's not as if you couldn't run a GPS and a beeper together and solve the issue. You just don't have the remote control capabilities then.
Sure. Yeah, certainly understand that. I've seen a lot of photos over the years of those dogs with 3-4 collars strapped to them. So, the more we can reduce that, the better. I do have another training question here from Sean. It says, Clay, thanks so much for taking the time to join us tonight. It's greatly appreciated. And this is from Sean Curran, our Vice President of Mission Sustainability. It says, my 10-month-old German Wirehair is coming along nicely with his training, but one of his tendencies when retrieving has been doing a few victory laps around me before delivering a bumper. What are your thoughts on the best way to address this? Return to some check cord training to better direct him, or deploy some other tactics with this collar?
So I was waiting. We're 25 minutes in before it happened. Force fetch, and this is where I'm not gonna say controversial. It's a lot like making bratwursts. the end result is phenomenal. The process sometimes is less palatable than other parts of training. But it really gives you, it'd be like if you went and bought a new pickup today that didn't have power brakes, didn't have power steering, you'd laugh at your buddy that did that. Well, to me, force fetching is that, because we can talk about wounded birds that get away. We can talk, but it really comes down to that ability to make that dog to where he knows he has to listen to you when he comes to you, and that staying away, playing keep away with the bird, hard mouthing the bird is not an option. Spitting the bird, making it his is not an option if you've gone through that force fetch process. And I probably offended some guys who think, oh, my dog's got great natural retrieve, I just want to do that. Again, 20 years ago, force fetch was a way nastier process than the guys I've seen it do today. I've seen dogs on the force bench wagging their tail, my pup back here included. So I think, if it's done at the right pace for the dog, doing stuff early on, talking like with a 10-week-old puppy, a leather glove, a couple fingers in the mouth, and when they finally quit squirming, it coming out, messing with their ears while we're giving them a treat, getting them ready for the ear pinch. It's the force fetch process of today is a much more humane process than it's been in the past, but it really is the thing that ties together your ability to enforce commands in every situation.
Gotcha. So in this particular scenario, right? So, and I don't know if Sean is working on this or not, but when working on that trained retrieve, so say he's working on that, he's got a solid hold, the dog will go out and pick it up. In your perception, is this a retrieve issue, or is it a recall issue of the dog finishing? So the dog obviously goes out, picks it up, has it in its mouth. And I'm dealing with this with my puppy, right? She's 5 months old, and
right.
I've been doing like the hold and all that type of stuff with her, and she's great in the house. And she pointed her first rough grouse last week, and I killed it, and she picked that sucker
Nice.
up and ran for the hills. But she's a puppy. But takes this dog that's got some more training. Where is that issue, and how do you correct it in your perception? Obviously, we're not seeing the dog, but where can we use both the check cord and the e-collar that Sean talks about to ensure that dog, when it's coming, maybe comes halfway back and then goes to make a loop or something? How do you where would you insert the training opportunity there to get the dog to finish, to come to you?
Yeah, but for sure, on the check cord, we can make the dog come back. Mm-hmm. Even if we're just kind of having to drag them back in. The concern, if your trained retrieve foundation isn't really laid down, is that the dog can decide that, okay, I can fix this, and it spit the bird. And it's like, okay, if I'm getting pressure to retrieve, then that's easy. Then, I can just, all of a sudden the bird's not a part of it. And then it really does just become an obedience thing. Well, I have to enforce that obedience, but wanting to be able to enforce that obedience while demanding that the dog finish that retrieve, that's the reason I'm dovetailing them together. It becomes a two-legged stool. Do you just want the great hold, or do you want the perfect recall? Well, if you don't have both together, and that's a lot of the stuff we do, even on the force fetch and et cetera, we may get fairly far along with a check cord with a lead, and then we'll go back to like baby steps and redo these drills and knows really, really well with the e-collar. And so, sorry, I gotta get some juice.
Nope. And
so that's where I'm not afraid to bring the dog back around to where it really feels like, well, hey, my dog, he's on step 5. Why are you taking it back all the way to step 1? It's like, well, because if we don't take the e-collar back to, there's 1,000,000% no doubt this dog knows what I want. I don't want there to be any confusion when we're doing that. So that's why I would suggest, if the hold's down, and they're good, start with the check cord, making him come back in with that before, start trying to use the e-collar for your recall while the fetch is, while the retrieve's in process.
Gotcha. Sean followed up with another sort of bit of information that says the dog's normal pattern is to run 2 or 3 small circles, and then bring the bumper to hand at heel. So there sounds like there's definitely, the dog understands heel, understands going out and retrieve. Is there what I'm hearing you say is really focus on that finish, that come here right now. You don't really have the option to go left or right or to do the circles.
Yeah, I would just tighten everything up, shorten the distance of the retrieve. We've been spending the summer and even this fall working on blind retrieves and hand signals with LS. Well, we started off getting him to go to a spot 5 feet away. So, now he's going 150 yards or so away. But if we didn't have control at 5, 10, 15 feet, we wouldn't be trying it at great distances. So I would just shorten up that distance, just minimize the amount of space the dog has to play grab ass, because it's obvious that the dog has intelligence and he has ability because he's doing it, but he's doing it more on his terms than on Sean's.
Gotcha. Yeah. Excellent. I really love that feedback to back up. Very nice. Let's see, digging back through questions. I have another product question here. It says it's from Mary. It says, for the dog handler that already owns 4 SportDog Tech 1.0 track and train collars, what's the most economical way to upgrade the collars and the receiver? Or can it even be done, she asks.
It can. Call my customer care department, and Mike, can you put out my email to the chat?
Yeah, I'll do that right now while you're talking. So I apologize, I'm not looking at the camera.
And you have it there. Send that to the group.
Will do.
We have mechanisms for helping you buy the gear at a better rate than going and paying retail. We appreciate the investment that you've made in SportDog and you've made in your hunting dogs, and so we want to help you out there. Put that out, but we have a couple programs through our customer care center where we can really fix you up.
Excellent, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I put your email over here in the chat for folks so they can reach out. Maybe that some of these folks might have some follow-up questions for you as well. Back.
I am spending the next week in a duck blind, so if there's a little delay in my response, I'm out with my dog.
Fair. I think that's appropriate. I'm also very jealous. So good luck. I have another question here. This is from Zach over on Facebook. I'm trying to decipher this. It says, I have a contain and train collar. If I want to use the collar with tone and vibrate only, is there a plug that I can screw into the probe location so it doesn't have the pieces in their neck?
Yes. So we actually have some non-conductive plastic probes.
Okay.
There are several countries in Europe where the use of static is banned, and so all of our stuff we ship to Europe have these plastic probes, because you can still train with tone or train with vibe over there, or if you're in a location allows you to use. So contact the customer care, 800-732-0144, and that's on our website as well, sportdog.com. But just ask for when you're talking to just one of the customer care representatives, ask for the CEA. That's our customer experience advocate. And they just have a little more intimate training, a little more knowledge on the SportDog stuff. And I've gotten them some of these probes that they can get sent out to you.
Excellent. Yeah. Very valid point about folks that might be in areas where they can't use the probe pieces. And for other folks that may be worried about the probe's wearing on the dog's neck. I have a philosophical question here from Glenn Blackwood, who's our director of regional development over in Michigan. Glenn asks, he'd love your thoughts on using tones, I guess, or vibrate versus like slight stimulus. So maybe a low pressure, electronic stimulus.
So of all the above, as long as they're used consistently. So tone for me is a recall. I'm up in South Dakota. I'm very fortunate. I get to travel a lot. I love to, I'd rather burn diesel and chase wild birds than I would go down the street and, get after the released. They have their place for certain. I'm not knocking it, but I'm fortunate enough that I have the time to go and chase those birds. So I try to hunt as stealthily as possible. So I like using the tone as a recall when the dog's starting to stretch out of range a little bit. Just because I'm not blowing a whistle and letting every bird out there know I'm coming. I've also seen tone or vibe used very effectively as a warning, if you will, a precursor to, like, hey, I've done this, but I would rather you make them a command. Like I said, I use the tone as a recall. I've seen vibration done that way. I've seen vibe or tone be used to get the dog to quarter. So if we want him to quarter or to look back and take a hand signal again instead of using a whistle. But any cue that we've taught the dog, no different than the here command or the sit or a place command, we can teach that vibe to be something. We teach the tone to be something. Just consistency is the only thing I would really preach there. I'm not a warning tone guy, but I don't hate it. It's just my dad was never one that counted 1, 2, 3 when I was screwing up. It was generally if dad said it, I had better listen. So I think that an appropriate level of correction delivered after a command is more what I'm looking for, because I want that tone and vibe to be commands to the dog instead of a warning. But if it works for you to warn the dog with it, yeah, you bet. Just good, happy training.
Gotcha. Yeah. Sounds like your dad and mine would have gotten along very well. I apply that to my training as well. I use tone for come around, not necessarily come to me, but if they're pushing too far out, or like you were saying from a quartering perspective, if we're hunting a big field or a big aspen cut and I make a turn to go a different direction, I'll tone the dog to bring it around to the front. I think that to your point, teach it and be consistent. You also have to be on it of if you use the tone and they're not doing what you want, where's the reinforcement there? So super important to have both in mind.
Exactly right.
Yeah. David has a good question, and this is somewhat philosophical, I think. For you, do you use tone, or the question is, when tone is used as come, does that mean to check in or to come to heel? Or what would your preference be?
So for me, it's a keep coming towards me as long as I'm giving the tone command. That may be all the way to heel, or it may be, like you said, the come around, I'm changing directions. Or I like to keep my dog, at that 25, maybe 30-yard range. I'm not a good enough shot to really, start letting him stretch out further than that. So I like to use it as a comeback towards me. But then once the tone goes away, then I'm okay if the dog, stops his progress back to me. But now if I want it all the way to heel, I'll just hold it down until, he's right back there. And,
Gotcha.
And that's something that, my dog wears his collar a lot in the house. It's not because he's ill behaved, but I get all these little 15, 20-second training opportunities throughout the day.
Sure. Absolutely. And that can be so important in terms of their development. It's great to hear you say that. Glenn followed up in terms of using tone or vibrate as an overlay, for the correction. Could you talk a little bit about how you would do that? I know we sort of talked about that. You don't use the tone or the vibration as a precursor or a warning, if you will. But if you were to overlay the tone with a command and a correction, how would you go about doing that?
So in that scenario, I would, give a command, whether verbal, hand signal, whistle, whatever the command that we have firmly established. And again, that to me is the most important, is there's no doubt in that dog's mind what I'm asking of him. And so once the verbal command's been given and I'm not getting the response that I want, then to transition to tone. And the tone is kind of that, I'm serious. But as you very well pointed out a second ago, the tone loses all meaning if it's not followed up with a correction, whether be it a tug on the check cord, or if you're using a training chain, choke chain, as they've been called, a little pressure to there, so that the dog knows that, hey, this is a precursor to, so command, then the tone that was for lack of a better term, okay, I'm serious, and then the correction is how we would administer that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Another question here / comment from over on Facebook. Uric asks if you could point him specifically to where he should go hunt rough grouse. At least I'm paraphrasing there. And also if you could ask them to slow down so they're a little bit easier to shoot.
Yeah, if I could do that, boys, that'd be something. I'd love to have that power.
Yeah, if only, right? I can't. I was hunting 2 weeks ago, and I can't tell you the amount of birds that I heard and then saw for half a millisecond, and then they had very quickly disappeared. I think David chimed in the comment section very appropriately. Grouse make a living, and that's one of the ways that they do it. That's for sure, is with their speed. So Ben Jones,
absolutely. If I ever,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I hope I never lose that adrenaline rush, and that instant, almost primal fear that you get from that flush and those initial wing beats that just scare the hell out of you. If that ever goes away, I hope my time on Earth is up, because that just is, that's what we live for, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. There is something to be said for chasing a bird that you hear more than you see, and when you hear it, it is a visceral experience, to the true definition of that word, for sure. Well, Clay, I don't see any other questions, and I worry that we're bumping up on time, and certainly want to be respectful of yours. So again, I want to thank you for all of your time and answering all these questions, and also being willing to put your email out there, as well as the customer care number for SportDog, and sharing all of that. Really can't thank you enough, and as well as SportDog for supporting Rough Grouse Society, American Woodcock Society, and all that we're trying to do on the conservation front. Obviously, bird dogs are a big part of a lot of our membership and our pursuits for rough grouse and woodcock. So
for sure,
thank you all so much.
Thanks for your efforts. Thanks for allowing me to participate tonight. I enjoyed it, and yeah,
excellent.
I want to head downstairs and.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, good luck in the duck blind next week, and with the rest of your season as it wraps up. I know a lot of our membership is excited. This is October being prime time for so many things, but particularly for rough grouse and American woodcock. So I'll close out tonight by again saying thank you, Clay, and I hope everybody else that's tuning in is enjoying your season and gets out there hopefully either this week or this weekend. So thank you all.